In today's wars, the front line isn't always some trench dug in the mud. Sometimes it's 1,000 feet above a city street, carried on the wings of a cheap, mass-produced killing machine. Today, we're looking at two brutal, intertwined realities of the war in Ukraine. First, the relentless drone war targeting civilians. And second, the staggering, almost unbelievable human cost of the war on the ground. We're going to start in the skies.
It all begins with a sound. It's this distinct, high-pitched buzzing, almost like a lawnmower way up in the sky. That's the sound of an Iranian-designed Giron drone. And for countless civilians across Ukraine, it's become the sound of pure, imminent danger. See, it's a slow, kind of unsophisticated weapon, but its real power, its real terror, lies in its sheer numbers. On February 15th, the sky over Ukraine didn't just carry the bite of winter, it carried a literal storm of these machines. This was a massive, coordinated swarm attack, and it was designed to do one thing: to overwhelm, to saturate, and to punch right through the defenses. 83. Just let that number sink in for a second. That was the total count. 83 of these Giron drones, launched in wave after wave from Russian-controlled territory, just blanketing the country. The strategy behind it is as simple as it is brutal. You just can't shoot down everything. Now, you've got to give credit where it's due. Ukrainian air defenses are some of the most battle-hardened on the entire planet. They managed to neutralize 55 of those 83 drones. That's a 66% interception rate, which honestly is remarkable. But here's the brutal calculus of this new kind of war. 66% just isn't enough. It means that a third of the swarm, 25 drones, still got through, still found their targets.
So where did those 25 drones end up? Well, they weren't just aimed at military sites. Across 12 different locations, they tore into the very fabric of daily life. They hit power infrastructure, plunging people into cold and darkness. They hit schools. They hit residential apartment buildings. And they hit the very buildings that represent local community governance.
And this, right here, brings us to a really crucial point. This isn't just collateral damage. No. When you look at the targets, a deliberate strategy reveals itself, a strategy aimed squarely at the civilian population and the institutions that hold their communities together. Let's look at a specific example, just to see how this plays out on the ground. This was the Novgorod-Seversky District State Administration Building in the Chernihiv region. It's just a hollowed-out shell now. And this wasn't some barracks or a military command post. This was where people went to get official documents, where social services were managed. It was, for all intents and purposes, the heart of the local community. And the thing is, this strike in Chernihiv was not a one-off event, not by a long shot. If you look at the pattern over just the last 6 months, you see this clear, repeated targeting of these exact kinds of administrative centers. The goal seems pretty clear: destabilize these border communities, to destroy what some analysts call the facade of the state. It's an attempt to tell people, look, your government can't protect you, creating this vacuum of authority and hope. So while Chernihiv saw its civic institutions literally crumble, the port city of Odessa, the pearl of the Black Sea, was facing a much more personal, sustained kind of terror. For nights on end, the city was just hammered with attacks, stretching its people to their absolute breaking point. You could feel the impact everywhere. One drone slammed into a residential neighborhood, blowing out all the windows of a local school. The constant wail of air raid sirens created this atmosphere of exhaustion, of sleep deprivation, and constant anxiety. And the night before, an elderly woman was killed, right there in her own home. Think about that. She had lived through the Soviet Union, survived all of that history, only to be killed by one of these drones. While all of this terror is raining down from the sky, an entirely different and maybe even more brutal war is being waged on the ground. In the muddy, frozen trenches of eastern Ukraine, the conflict has earned a terrifying name: the meat grinder. And the numbers behind it are almost impossible to truly comprehend. 1,250. That is the number of Russian personnel losses reported by the Ukrainian General Staff in a single 24-hour period. That's not wounded. That's lost. That's the equivalent of 2 full military battalions just gone, rendered combat ineffective in one day. To try and wrap our heads around a number like that, let's look at this comparison. During the absolute peak of the Vietnam War, a conflict that defined a generation and tore a nation apart, the United States averaged about 26 casualties per day. What we're seeing here is a daily loss rate that is nearly 50 times that. The level of attrition is simply historic. So why? Why are the numbers this astronomically high? Well, a primary reason is the continued use of what are called human wave tactics. This is a brutal, almost century-old strategy. You are literally pushing waves of infantry, often with very little armored support, directly at heavily fortified positions, just trying to overwhelm them with sheer bodies. The battlefield quite literally becomes a meat grinder. And that staggering human cost is also accompanied by absolutely immense material losses. In that same 24-hour window, just look at this chart. Russia also lost 31 tanks, a staggering 123 artillery systems, and 40 more drones. It is a level of industrial-scale destruction of both people and equipment that we have not seen in Europe since the Second World War.
Okay, so when we take a step back and look at the big picture, we start to see two very distinct but very connected fronts of this war. One is fought with cheap, disposable machines. The other is fought with an almost disposable view of human life. Let's break down how these two strategies actually work together.
On one side, you've got the air war. It's defined by these low-cost, mass-produced drones like the Garan. They're slow, they're relatively easy to shoot down, but their power is in their quantity. They spread psychological terror and they force defenders to use up expensive missiles. Then on the other side, you have the ground war, and it's defined by an unbelievably high cost in human lives, fueled by those human wave tactics and a strategy of pure, brutal attrition. And that really brings us to the most important point of all of this. It's so easy to become numb to the statistics, right? To just see them as numbers on a chart. But as one of our sources put it so perfectly, every single number, whether it's 83 drones or 1,250 soldiers, every one represents a life, a family, a story, a community with a hole ripped right through its heart.
This whole strategy of overwhelming the enemy with sheer mass, both in the air and on the ground, it creates this profound and deeply urgent question. From that bombed-out administrative building in Chernihiv to the muddy fields of the Donbass, the human cost is mounting at a terrifying rate, and it leaves all of us to wonder, how much of this can possibly be sustained?
We're going to continue to track these developments and break down what they mean. For more explainers on the critical issues that are shaping our world, make sure you subscribe and stay informed. Thanks for watching.